Hello creative ones and welcome back to our gel printing fundamentals. Now I'm Michelle Brown with Mixed Media Art. I'm so excited to be sharing this series with you. So now we're up to episode 7. We are going to pull our first gel print. So we've talked about what jelly plate we need. We've talked about brayers. We've talked about paint and paper. We've talked about the setup. Now I'm ready to go. I've got my apron on. I've got my hair pulled back. So let's jump in to creating our first print. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get some paint ready to go. So like I said, we've got our setup, we've got our paper, we've got our gel plate on some plastic, we've got our rolling off, we've got our brayer, we've got our paints ready to go. And this is where we're going to start, nice and simply. So what we want to do is get a paint, give it a good shake. We want a small amount of paint. Now the biggest mistake people just starting out do is just using too much paint. So we really only need 3 or 4, gosh, not even pea-sized bits. Lid back on, grab our brayer, and then what we want to do is move the paint around with the brayer. Now we don't want to just move it backwards and forwards or else see the paint doesn't move. So we need to roll it, lift it up, move it around. So we want to go this way and that way. Oops, already got a little bit over the edge. And we want to get a nice even layer. Now if you find you're getting too many lines, just check how you're holding the brayer. We want it nice and flat and nice and light. And when we're happy with that, we're going to roll it off. We're then going to turn the brayer over. This one has a built-in stand because we don't want our brayer to stick to our piece of paper. We then get one of our sheets, we pop it down. I think I might have 2 sheets. No, all good. We're going to give it a really nice little rub. And then the magic happens. We get to pull the print. And there we go. Now we can set that aside to dry. So yes, it's got a few lines in it. It's got a little bit of paint left over from previous prints. That's okay. This is just the starting point. At this stage, we just want to get used to how much paint do we use? How do we move the paint around? We want to just stick to single colours to start off with, just so we can get the hang of moving the brayer, moving the paint around. So again, some of your troubleshooting things. So some of your paints might be a little bit old and gluggy. You might need to add a little bit of water or something in with it. Or you might even find that that paint's just no good for this. So we just want to create a few single coloured sheets to get started. Just practicing having the paper, the gel plate, a brayer turned over so it doesn't stick to the paper. And there we go. So now we can see that that's got the green from the second layer of paint and then some of the darker green from the original. Now that is almost dry. It doesn't take it all long to dry once we get started with these. So we can pile them up there. So I will tend to start from light colours and sort of work through dark. Again, at this point, we're just having a play. We're just moving the paint around. So if you're finding that you don't have enough paint, definitely add a bit more. If you find that you've been brayering for a while and it looks like the paint's coming back up onto your brayer, that could be because it is starting to dry and it is starting to pull the paint back off the plate. So if that's the case, we just want to get that piece of paper on. And we don't want to spend too much time overthinking it. We just want to keep moving. Create a few of those pages to get us started. Like I said, that is pretty much dry. So we really don't need a lot of paint. So one of the other things that we can do while we're just playing with single layers is create a bit of an ombre look, so putting 2 colours on. Now I suggest, because colours will mix, we don't want to have colours that are too different and we don't want to over mix them. So I'm going to start with the purple and a light pink. So again, some little bits of paint at this end. Some paint at this end. So what we want to do is brayer one off, clean the brayer and then move the other one around. So let's start with the lighter colour, with the pink. So moving it to about halfway along the plate and then just feathering it out in the middle. and then rubbing that off, brayering that off, and then starting on the purple paint. And so again, blending it a little bit into the middle, but we don't want to overblend it because the paint is still wet, so we can easily start overworking it and it will start to become muddy. And then we lose all of our beautiful colours. Now, as you'll notice, I don't tend to clean the plate between colours. I just tend to work from the lighter to darker ones. If I was going from something very dark and wanted to do something particular, then I might clean it with a baby wipe. And you can see that that's come up quite well. Here you can see that there's quite a bit of that purple left. That just means that was probably just a little bit thicker and it's pulled the top layer of paint off, but it's left some there. So we can certainly keep going with that. We might get another colour that will sort of work with that. So perhaps something like this. So this one's actually a shimmer paint. So you might be able to see a little bit of metallic in that. And again, we want to get it started here. And then just really lightly go back over that. We don't want to overwork it. We don't want to start lifting the paint up. And so yes, I don't tend to clean it between layers unless I wanted to do something very specific. I might clean it with a baby wipe, but until then I just move through, continue from the lighter colours to the darker colours, similar colours, and then every now and then we might jump to another colour and use some of the other techniques. So there we go. There we can see we've got some interesting beading from that paint, and it's helped pull up that purple paint as well. So perhaps just to finish off this session with a layer of white to do a little bit of a cleanup. It's always interesting to see what we get. So this first session about pulling your first print is really just about getting used to having the brayer, having your setup, moving around, not spending too much time fussing over what's on the plate because the paint is drying. We want to keep it moving. We want it to be able to create all these fun patterns and things that we'll be working on over the next few episodes. Again, give it a nice rub. Another thing to consider, particularly if you've got any trouble with your wrists, is you don't need to hold the brayer. We don't need to push it really hard. We're not trying to push the paint into the surface. We're just moving it around on top. So just be mindful of how you sort of press it, and then when you're pressing those prints as well. Oh, and then we can see there the white has pulled up all that really pretty pink and gave us a really interesting pattern. Excellent. So I hope that's given you a little bit of confidence to get started on pulling your first prints. So that's given you an idea of some of the things you need to consider. Like I said, don't start with too much paint. It's always easier to add a bit extra, but just keep moving through that cycle of paint down, brayering it out, clean off your brayer, turning the brayer over, picking up your paper, giving it a nice smush, and then lifting it up and seeing what it does. By doing that a few times, you start to get an idea of what your paint's working, which ones are working, which ones might be too gluggy or not working as well. You can see sometimes that shimmer paint seems to react a bit differently, so we'd want to consider where we use that. And then, of course, laying them out, let them dry, and it never takes very long. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Pulling Your First Print. Please leave your questions in the comments. I look forward to catching up with you soon. Of course, give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back very soon with our next episode of Gel Printing Fundamentals. Have a crafty day.